We did it, Meg. We're back.
Yes, we are.
Just like we promised all the Yorktownians. We said, hey, we would be back, and here we are. And we're coming at you with some spooky.
Ooh.
We promised you. It's October. It's spooky season.
It's so fitting because it's thundering and lightning out.
I know. It's going to be a pretty good one. Let me set the stage early before we do the intro. In the heart of America, nestled in the quiet town of Villisca, Villisca, Iowa, stands a house. A house that was born witness to unspeakable horrors. It was the night of June 19th, 1912, when 8 people, 6 of them children, were brutally murdered with an axe. Over 100 years later, the Villisca, I'm going to say that wrong the whole time, Villisca Axe Murders remain unsolved, cloaked in mystery and steeped in chilling whispers of the paranormal. That's pretty good, huh?
That's pretty good.
This is not just a retelling of the murders. This is a journey into the unsettling details that have been buried beneath the more common stories. You have heard about the brutal crime, or maybe you haven't. But what about the strange sightings before the murders, or the eerie silence that fell over the town in the aftermath? Join us in this episode as we're going to dig a little bit deeper into the shadows of Villisca and uncover details about this horrifying event that other podcasts might not have even dared to touch.
Dun, dun, dun.
There it is. This is the Your Town Podcast, and I'm Matt.
I'm Meg.
The beautiful Meg is here. Thunder, lightning, coughs.
Sorry, I didn't mean to ruin the mood.
I was into it.
I know, I was trying really hard. I had a really bad tickle in my throat.
It's okay. Viewer and listener discretion advised. As always, there is probably going to be some details that is a little bit gruesome, but we try to keep it a little okay. But either way, let's do the intro and let's jump into this. Are you ready?
A little okay.
It's a little. We try to keep it a little okay.
I like the way you worded it.
Thank you.
Now.
When the Moore family and their 2 young guests went to bed on that hot June evening, they had no idea the terror that awaited them. But here's what many don't know. The killer was likely inside the house, already hiding in the attic. Evidence suggested that the intruder had patiently waited in the attic, watching, listening, as the family settled in for the night. There was a discovery of cigarette butts in the attic that adds a sinister layer to the story. Imagining someone waiting in the darkness, nervously puffing on cigarettes, knowing what they're about to do, the attic itself was very small, cramped, and terrifying. Very terrifyingly close to where they slept, Meg. And yet, nobody heard them. Isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm.
Doctors then determined that the murders occurred between midnight and 5 a.m. 2 spent cigarettes were found in the attic, and that suggested the killer or killers patiently waited until the Moore family and their Stillinger guests were asleep. Although the official tour that you could potentially take of this house claims there was no cigarettes found. The attack began in the master bedroom where Josiah and Sarah Moore were sleeping. Josiah was struck more times than any other victim with such force that the face was actually mutilated. The eyes were actually missing. The ceiling in the room bore a gouge that had a mark from the axe as it was raised to strike him. The killer, or killers, struck Sarah Moore with the blade of the axe while using the blunt side on the other victims. Herman, Mary Catherine, Arthur, and Paul. They were next, each bludgeoned in the head in the same brutal fashion as their parents. Afterward, the murderer returned to the master bedroom to deliver additional blows to the elder Moores, knocking over a shoe that had filled with blood. Finally, the killer then moves downstairs to the guest bedroom, where Ina and Lena were murdered. Investigators believed that all the victims, except for Lena Stillinger, had been asleep when murdered. They thought that she was awake and tried to fight back as she was found lying crosswise on the bed with a defensive wound on her arm. There was other details that were often overlooked, like the fact that after killing the Moores and their guests, the killer covered each victim's face with clothing or blankets. Why? Was it guilt? Or was it something far more chilling, like superstition, or a way to control their spirits in death? One of the strangest elements, Meg, of the Villisca Axe Murders is the behavior of the killer after the act. Most sources actually mention the fact that mirrors in the house were covered. But did you know that there was a 4-pound slab of bacon that was removed from the icebox and it was actually found lying next to the murder weapon? What could it mean?
I don't know.
There's speculation that it was some sort of like ritualistic offering or even a part of the killer's disturbed psychology. And speaking of psychology, one chilling clue often missed is that the killer, after slaughtering the family, took time to wash his hands in a basin before calmly leaving the house. No rushing, no panic, nothing. He even took the house key with him, locking the doors behind him, as if he was in complete control of everything, even the aftermath. In the days that followed the murders, the town of Villisca was obviously paralyzed with fear. But there was something more. Strange reports began to emerge from those who lived nearby. Neighbors claimed to have seen shadows moving near the Moore house long before the murders took place. Strange figures lurking at the edge of their vision. Local legend says that the land itself may have been cursed. Some who have visited the house in the decades since claim that they feel a suffocating presence as they walk through the rooms. Visitors have reported hearing disembodied voices, the sound of children laughing, and even the faint clink of a swinging axe. While many pass off these sightings as products of imagination, it is interesting to note, Meg, that even before the murders, Villisca was a town of dark history, strange disappearances, and odd accidents that were rarely discussed. So, could the murders have been a result of something far more ancient and sinister than just a disturbed mind? A force behind human understandings?
Maybe.
What do you think?
I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's possible. I mean, we're a couple of people that enjoy some ghost shows, some ghost hunters. I mean, we've seen a lot of things. Obviously, not, well, some things in person. You know, a lot of things on TV. And I'm a strong believer that just because it's on TV, there's a very good chance it's not real.
I feel like I've seen a lot of things in person.
But you have seen a lot more things in person than most. So, I mean, we're believers. But who knows? Many believe that the case of the Villisca Axe Murders was never solved because of poor police work. This part just blows my mind. Granted, it is 1912, so things are a little bit different, a lot of bit different than now. After the original search, people were let in to see if they committed the crime, completely contaminating the weapon. They were just coming in and be like, do you think you're a suspect? Do you think you could grab this, touch this, do this? Yeah, but there's more to the story. Over the years, several suspects were named, but each had their own strange connection to the case, and this is where it gets wild. I want you to think, as a listener, and Meg, as a person that has not seen this, who do you think did it? Because we're going to go over a couple of these suspects, the case. I think there's a strong case for almost any one of these people to be the one that did it. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
One of the most compelling figures in this is Reverend George Kelly, a traveling preacher who actually confessed to the crime only to later recant. Kelly was a man known for his strange behavior and fascination with young girls. But what's often left out of the story is that he had been seen near the house days before the murders, acting erratically. June 8th, day before the murder, 1912, he came to Villisca to teach the Children's Day services, which the Moore family actually did attend on June 9th. He left town between 5 a.m. and 5:50 a.m. June 10th, hours before the bodies were discovered. Reverend Kelly had confessed to the murders in court, but the jury didn't believe his confession. Kelly was actually tried twice for the murder. In the weeks that followed, he displayed a fascination with the case and wrote many letters to police, investigators, and even the family of the deceased. This obviously aroused suspicion, and a private investigator wrote back to Reverend Kelly asking for details that the minister might know about the murders. Kelly replied with great detail, claiming to have heard sounds and possibly witnessed the murders. His known mental illness made authorities question whether he actually knew the details because of having committed the murders, or just imagining this whole account. In 1914, 2 years after the murders, Kelly was arrested for sending obscene material through mail. He was harassing women who applied for a job as his secretary, and it got pretty gross. And I was going to make some comments about it, but I'm going to move on to Reverend. He was sent to St. Elizabeth's Hospital the National Mental Hospital in Washington, D.C., investigators speculated again that Kelly could be the murderer of the Moore family. 1917, Kelly was arrested for the Villisca murders. Police obtained a confession from him, however. Followed many hours of interrogation, and again, he recanted. After 2 separate trials, he was acquitted.
So he confessed twice and then took it back twice?
Just kept talking about it and recanting. Wasn't me.
Huh.
All right, let's talk about State Senator Frank Jones. I mean, these are people in power that could have potentially done this. He had a bitter rivalry with Josiah Moore. Josiah Moore had worked for Frank Jones at his implement store for many years before leaving to open his own store. Moore reportedly took business away from Jones, including a very successful John Deere dealership. Moore was rumored to have had a sexual affair with Jones's daughter-in-law, and some believe he actually hired someone to commit the murders. But here's what kind of where it starts to get a little bit strange. Jones was known to be deeply superstitious, and some say he may have believed that by ordering the deaths of the Moores, he was fulfilling some twisted form of divine justice. William Mansfield was involved in the theory that Senator Jones hired him, an ex-convict and former U.S. Army soldier, to murder the Moore family. 9 months before the murders, a similar case of an axe murder occurred in Colorado Springs, Colorado. 2 axe murder cases followed in Ellsworth, Kansas, and Paola, Kansas. The cases were similar enough to raise possibility of having been committed by the same person. Other murders reported as possibly being linked to these crimes included the numerous unsolved axe murders along the Southern Pacific Railroad from 1911 to 1912, the unsolved axemen of New Orleans killings, as well as several other such murders during this time period. A restaurant owner from Shenandoah. That's fun to say. I can say that, but I can't say Villisca, which is also in Iowa, identified Mansfield as the man he saw the morning after the Villisca murders boarding a train. This man said he had walked from Villisca, so there's many similarities in all these cases, and yet lack of evidence. Then there's Henry Lee Moore, who is not related to the Moore family, was convicted of the murder of his mother and grandmother several months after the Villisca murders. Guess what his weapon of choice was, Meg?
An axe.
Also an axe.
Yes.
Then there was Loving Mitchell, was Josiah's brother-in-law, threatened to kill him, but he was cleared as a suspect. Are you keeping up? There's a lot.
That is a lot.
Then there's Paul Mueller, an immigrant from Germany, was another suspect. And then there was actually a 2017 book, The Man from the Train by Bill James and Rachel McCarthy. They actually discussed the murder and all the other murders, and they said it was Paul. He was even a subject of a year-long manhunt that was not successful. The book says after a ton of research that they believed he killed 59 people in 14 separate incidents, always selecting families based on what, Meg?
Who lived near railroad tracks and traveled by train.
I mean,
I'm guessing he traveled by train.
Yeah, he traveled by train, but he focused on them. And yet, despite the suspects' theories, the case went cold, leaving the town of Villisca under a dark cloud. But perhaps it was meant to remain unsolved. Being spooky season, I feel like we need to tie in a quick little paranormal connection. What do you think? But before we do, who do you think it was? Could have been any of them, really, right?
I kind of leaning towards the railroad one.
Me too.
Like, that seems
a little more, but I don't know. I'm still leaning toward Reverend.
Okay.
But today, the Villisca Axe Murder House is one of the most well-known haunted locations in America. Hence why we're talking about it in spooky season. Visitors and paranormal investigators alike have reported terrifying experiences inside its walls. Cold spots, flickering lights, and shadowy figures are just the beginning. In one chilling report, a group of visitors described hearing the sound of an axe being dragged across the floor, followed by a blood-curdling scream. Others have seen ghostly apparitions of children peeking around the corners or heard soft voices calling their names. There's one recurring vision, the silhouette of a man holding an axe standing at the foot of the bed where the Moore children once slept. Could it be the restless spirits of the victims or something more malevolent? Something that existed long before the Moore family ever lived there. What do you think, Meg? Was it, just a sick individual? Was it the land? Was it the house?
I've seen a lot of shows, and a lot of times they say it's the land.
I could see that. In the end, the Villisca Axe Murders leaves us with more questions than answers. But the act of a deranged man, or could it have been part of something much darker? The clues left behind, the covered mirrors, the strange positioning of the bodies, the bacon, suggest a killer operating on a level of logic far removed from our own. What about the paranormal? Do the spirits of the victims still linger in the house, seeking justice? Are they forever trapped, victims of a force that we may never fully understand? Obviously, as October settles in, as we sit here recording in a nice little October thunder and lightning storm, the chill in the air, and the nights, they grow longer. We invite you to visit the Villisca Axe Murder House, if you dare. But be warned, what you find there may follow you home. Tell them Your Dumb Podcast sent you, and they have no idea who we are. Just enjoy and send us some pictures of the Villisca House. Send it to the to any metabeardlaws.com. Let's go with that one. So obviously, thank you for joining us in this eerie journey in the heart of Villisca's darkest mystery. Obviously, we hope you enjoyed the episode. We gave you, in our opinion, a deeper look into the layers of this pretty popular case. The house stands today, which is pretty wild, and a silent witness to the unspeakable horrors that occurred over a century ago. Wild, right?
It is wild.
Shout out to our sources, Wikipedia, the Des Moines Register.com, DannyEChase.com did a cool little thing on that too. But yeah, we got a quote. You want to read the quote?
Sure.
Yeah, do the thing.
Life is about the choices we make, and we have to do our best to make the good ones. Otherwise, we get stuck living in the bad ones. Mrs. Flanks.
I thought it was an interesting one. That was one that popped up when I was trying to find quotes about the Villisca house, and that one popped up. So, all right. That's all we got. Hopefully you enjoyed episode 1 of Spooky Season. Should we do 3 more, Meg?
Yeah.
All right. We'll find some states. We'll find some spooky stories. You want to pick a state? You want to find a story? We'll discuss off air, but...
Yeah.
All right.
We'll figure it out.
We'll do another one, or if you listeners have any suggestions, please let us know. We would love... We got 3 more spooky weeks. All right. That's all we got.
Got some good spooky books to look into.
We got some spooky books to look into. That one even says Spooky New York.
I mean, if we have to retouch on a state, you have to retouch on a state.
That's the beauty. That's the beauty of it. All right. I got nothing else. You got anything else?
Nope.
All right. Have a good rest of your day, your week, your month, your year. We'll be back next week. Tell a friend. Be a friend. Share the link. We'd love it. That's all I got. You got anything else?
Nope.
Okay. We're out of here. Goodbye.
Goodbye.